Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, welcome to my guide for Persephone. Persephone is a long-range mage who plays primarily in the mid lane. Her wave clear is stellar, she has great CC, and her range as well as her movement ability makes her a potent jack-of-all-trades mage that you can rely on every match. Build-wise, Persephone goes whatever is meta for mages, specifically leaning towards going all out in terms of damage, as her base cooldowns are good enough for her to forego some cooldown reductions in return for ridiculous amounts of power. Relics-wise, you guessed it, just beats Nages, nothing too complicated here. Well, I shouldn't have said that because her passive on paper is very complicated. Before you can understand it though, we need to look at least one of Persephone's abilities. Get it? Because one is the first. Persephone shoots out a fast moving projectile. This projectile stops on walls and gods but will pass right through minions. When the projectile hits an enemy, the enemy is heavily damaged and slowed. When the ability hits a wall, god, or reaches its maximum range, it will drop a plant. And this plant is part of where Persephone's passive comes into play. These plants spawn as seeds, and in 5 seconds will sprout into the full-grown plants. Persephone can interact with these plants by basic attacking them. When she basic attacks a seed, she'll be healed. When she basic attacks one of the grown plants, the plant will fire forward in the direction Persephone is looking at when she hit it, and will deal damage to every enemy it comes in contact with within this little AoE. So this is sort of like a 5th ability, Persephone's ability to interact with these plants and seeds. We'll get to how you want to interact with the seeds and plants during each ability, since of course the plants will be spawned differently depending on which ability you're using. But anytime Persephone interacts with a seed or a plant, she gets a seed planted in her little pomegranate passive here. When she returns to the fountain, all of the seeds in the pomegranate will be sold for 3 gold each, meaning Persephone can sell up to 300 gold worth of seeds, nothing to scoff at. This pomegranate portion of the ability is more or less just a reward for using Persephone properly, as in using your plants as much as you possibly can. But that's not it for her passive. When Persephone dies, she enters a ghost state in which she's able to plant 6 seeds, meaning that even if you end up dying in lane, you can still set yourself up for some pressure when you get back. The time limit of this ability is the exact same as her respawn timer, but if you die in lane, you of course want to plant some seeds on your side of the lane for guaranteed wave clear, clumping them up as well as you can, but keep in mind that after you place all the seeds possible, you'll exit the ghost state. In this ghost state, Persephone is completely immune to absolutely everything, but as a result is completely unable to see any gods, ally or enemy, and is unable to see the fire giant and gold fury too. It's a weird passive to say the least, but just remember, kiss. Not the kind you think of when you see Persephone, just keep it simple, stupid. There's potentially a good amount of stuff you could be doing with this passive, but in most situations, especially seeing as how you usually die more often in the earlier parts of the game when the spawn timers and therefore the passive time is low, it's best just to plant your seeds and peace out. Persephone's first ability shares this same sentiment. It's actually one of the best poke and wave clear abilities in the mage class and should be used consistently as such. It also has the benefit, as far as poke and wave clear are concerned, of a long cast time, so you can begin casting it out of range of the ability and walk into range for it while casting it for some extra safety. It massacres waves and enemy life bars alike with just one cast, so learn the range and speed of that projectile so you can poke with it as well as clear waves, and you're off to the races as far as this ability is concerned individually. More importantly is how it interacts with Persephone's second ability. Persephone fires a small AoE onto the ground, placing 3 seeds, and this ability is able to be used over walls. This ability also contains all the information about the plants when they're interacted with as seeds and plants respectively, so here's that information. Great, next up, the ability itself. It's a very simple ability. Against gods, you hit your 1, you use this. A basic attack cancel here not really being necessary as it will only grant you a heal from the seed that was dropped via the 1, so unless you're low, it's best just to 1-2 as fast as possible. Against gods, if you don't think you can hit your 1 on them, you can use this raw for poke. It's actually quite easy to hit once you get the timing down, and the range is excellent. Then, when you just want to hit the wave, 1 the wave, then use this on the front melee minions. This not only sets you up for plants so that you can save your 1 and your 2 respectively for poke on the enemy and let your plants do the wave clearing on the next wave, but also sets you up beautifully for Persephone's insane zone control. Now this has a lot of variables like who the enemy mid laner is, both in terms of the character they're playing and how they're playing them, so I'll keep it brief. Essentially, if your lane opponent or enemy jungler are just being way too passive, as in only walking in range to hit the wave and never tries to hit you, you always want to be using your plants to wipe the wave as soon as possible, saving your abilities for all-in attempts or rotations. And if they're more aggressive, you guessed it, save your plants on the ground as a pressure tool, as no mid-jungle combo, no matter how aggressive, wants to dive onto a Persephone who has a lane full of plants. This idea is bolstered by Persephone's third ability. Persephone leaps either forwards or backwards, depending on your directional input, dealing medium damage to any enemies near her when she first leaps. Remember, this is elite, albeit a short one, so you can go over some walls and easily immune abilities simply by using this ability. So already off to a flying start with one of the best escapes in the mage class, being able to easily disengage or engage. If Persephone has any plants in that same AoE, whether they be in seed form or full plant form, they will be shot in the direction Persephone is currently looking, regardless of whether or not she leaps forwards or backwards. As far as using this for an escape, it's very obvious, just like any other movement ability. Someone dashes or blinks at you, immediately leap backwards, and if you're being chased, leap forward every chance you get. Using it for the plant activation actually doesn't come up too often. You of course drop it on any and all plants prior to backing and just peace out from there. As for rotations, you need to be a little careful. The combo here is of course 1-2ing a target, then getting enraged to 3 and then pop it, which you of course do not want to do in teamfights, but it can work in those 2v2 and 3v3 skirmishes in the early and mid game. Don't worry about your distance to your enemies now that you've left them, since Persephone's ultimate has literally infinite range. Persephone becomes CC immune and fires a projectile. On contact with a wall or enemy god, the projectile will deal damage, root, and cripple the enemy god hit, and if hit a wall, it will still have the same exploding effect. The projectile creates an area in which any enemy gods who enter will be snagged by a vine. This vine cripples them as well as slows, and you cannot leave this area created by the projectile if you are attached by a vine. Of course, there is a very notable counter. If an enemy basic attacks the original projectile 5 times, it will die and so will the entire area, and thereby the vines. And plus, the person trapped in the original projectile can hit it too. There's of course the other obvious weakness of this ability. If they get behind a wall or simply see it coming from a distance, it's very easy to avoid, so you do need to time it quite well. So those are certainly things to look out for, especially in the jungle where naturally there's walls everywhere. But get it right, and Persephone ult on an uncoordinated team, and whew, boy, it can feel almost impossible to play around. Typically you want to use your ultimate in teamfights in 2 different ways. For one, if you're getting jumped on too often, you can save your ultimate for some insanely good self-peel. Keep in mind that hitting the person who's diving you will result in the rest of their team struggling to get to you as well, thanks to the vines on the ultimate, a bit like Artemis ult in that respect. Then the aggressive usage of this ability generally to follow up with a teammate's CC. Your support gets a good engage, some purification beads or ultimates are popped, and now it's your chance to smack this ability on hopefully a squishy target, but don't forget that thanks to the vines, hitting a tank isn't terrible either. Comboing this in the laning phase and during rotations, you usually want to start or end with it. Starting with it is great for obvious reasons. If you snag a squishy target in, say, the dual lane of this ability, they have to use their beads or ultimate to get out of it, and your team is in great standings to kill them or come back later and get an easy kill. As a finisher, it's great too though. We've seen already that Persephone has some great damage in her core kit, so she can do more than enough without using this ability. So unless a clear great ult opportunity is looking you in the face, just save this infinite range ability to finish off any target, even if you miss and have to rely on the vines damage. Speaking of which, let's get to some combos with Persephone. 1-2 or 2-1, whichever feels more comfortable for you. 1-2, and if they back up, position yourself to start basic attacking the plants once they've grown. If you're in control of the lane, you can 1-2, walk up, and 3 to activate the plants. A not so efficient but fun one is 2 in front of you, 1 your enemy, and 3 away so the plants will now chase the slow target. Ult, 1-2, and position yourself to hit the plants. Ult, 1, 2, 3. One, ult, 2, 3. And keep in mind that while these combos do great damage, they take a while to get off, so if the enemy uses beads to get out of them, or your intended target is going to get peel from an ally, you should just immediately 3 backwards. For ability leveling, you want your 1 at level 1, your 2 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. From there you want to max your 1, your 2, then your 3. Putting a level into your ultimate at level 5 of course, but skipping leveling it until your 1 and 2 are maxed. I see some people even waiting until after their 3rd ability is maxed to level this, but that seems excessive to me. You want this ability doing some damage in them into late game. Persephone is controversial for a variety of reasons. People despise her rework for not addressing the annoyance of playing against her, while the aspects that made diving deep into her mechanics rewarding were more or less removed. I didn't care much for the original Persephone, so when I look at the current Persephone, I just see a relatively safe, fun mage with cool combos and a neat unique mechanic with her plants. As unique as the original Persephone? No, but she still has more than enough to keep you thinking, at least relative to a lot of the other mages in SMITE. If you pick up Persephone, you'll find a great all-rounder, whose only major downsides are being a tad slow and dealing out damage and not being quite as safe as some other mages. But she'll keep you safe and farmed up enough during that laning phase, and that's where most newer players are going to struggle. So she's got a nice safety net for you until you learn more about her deeper mechanics. That's all I have on Persephone for now. Thanks for watching.